Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for November the 4th. The excitement, the bets are in. Everyone's bated anticipation for the outcome of the election. Of course, the market's excited either way because it's going to continue to rise simply because of the devaluation of the dollar. And we saw, with the weak economic numbers that came out, despite the way it looked rather modestly bad, without the government ads for jobs, the numbers were horrible. When you break down the numbers, you see that all the new jobs that have ever been created came from the migrant, if you want to call it an invasion or just the number of increased people crossing the borders. Most of those jobs have all gone to them as opposed to Americans. So you've got some real disruption. And of course, that shows in the polls with the dissatisfaction ratings for the government as it is and the change. So the market is betting on a Trump win, but we all know that it's going to come down to a few counties within a couple of states who may or may not let people see how the votes are counted. And it'll be a repeat of what we saw the last couple of cycles. And there's going to be a lot of frustration, litigation, because it's not open, it's not clear. From a market standpoint, we're looking at, from a daily standpoint, relative weakness, but it's supporting within the relative 61% range here. You've got short-term buyers on the DOC keeping things from falling apart. And, you're going to get some back and forth within that, but I think the bets are pretty much placed. And, from a broader standpoint, the market has been expecting Trump, but of course they see the polls and they get skittish back and forth, and you're going to see that until the actual count takes place and the uncertainty that comes with that. But we know the trade going forward from an economic standpoint, depending on who wins, and that's going to be rather clear. The winners are going to become very obvious from that standpoint. When you look at it from an NQ standpoint, same weakness, broader throughout. No real changes from there. Interesting that the Fed is going to be cutting rates, but the market is making for higher rates. So that's that evening out that we talked about, the disparity. And there's really not a whole lot the Fed can do in this situation, because as long as the spending is what it is, and it's not going to stop, at some point the market's going to keep demanding higher and higher rates. And when they finally get there, it's going to be at a divergent to where the Fed is. And well, actually, we're reaching an equilibrium at this particular stage. But if oil continues to rise, inflation, as we know, from a core standpoint of what people actually buy, is still going up. That hasn't changed. Of course, big difference on who wins and what happens. Euro, obviously, bonus if Harris wins, and it suffers because Trump has promised tariffs, and the euro would be beaten up quite a bit, which from a banking standpoint, credit standpoint, they have problems with that happening. Gold is going to continue its rise. There's just no question about it. It's going to have its back and forth. The same with crypto. But at the end of the day, you're going to see a continued devaluation of fiat currencies. It's actually going to be a boon for real estate. People think that there's going to be an appreciation in real estate, but it's not really the way it works. Just like in the 70s, values went up because the value of the dollar went down. And those who hold those assets are going to do well in the coming years, simply because that value is going to increase. And what you're going to get is a trade that will be amongst people who already own the asset. And that will then split off to when people's earnings catch up enough that they can afford to get back into the market at that stage. And so you'll see a lot of gimmicks as far as no down and all that come back again. It's all going to be the same as it was. ETH obviously suffering the same about as Bitcoin, but definitely been a lot softer. And of course, the regulatory environment becomes significant depending on who wins. The market is expecting much less regulatory and restrictions overall from a crypto standpoint on Trump versus Harris. Those kinds of things are obvious. From a 50K standpoint, you can see here that fall off was MBI White leads, pretty clean, straightforward from there. And then Magenta's taken over right now. We're in a bit of a in-between. We had the negative, which we did pull back towards the zero, but didn't quite reach it. So it's a bit of a failure from that standpoint, and that usually leads to a nice up move, in which case it actually did here in the pre-market already. And you can see buy setup configuration from the broader 50K. Intraday stuff, pretty much back and forth. And again, that gets back into the option trade, and that's simply a reflection of money wanting to move quicker. But you can see the early uptick from the European session. Going to be exciting stuff. Obviously, we'll stay with it, but we're going to have the readings. It'll be pretty straightforward for us going forward. I don't see any changes from a intrinsic algo level that suggests there's going to be any difference in the way the market is treating things. They haven't been forced to alter anything, and so they're not going to. That's the long and the short of it. But as always, anything relevant, I'll put on the Skype chat for you. Have a good one. Trade well.